Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first Substance 3D live stream of the year. My name is Wes. I am the head of our Substance 3D evangelism team, and I will be your host. Today, I am thrilled to say that I am joined by the legendary Jérémie. I don't even have to say his last name, just legendary Jérémie. He's the Substance 3D ecosystem product director, so awesome title there. He's going to walk you through lots of exciting news today. We also have in our chat Vincent and Val, so they're going to be checking your questions. So please go ahead and send those in. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to have a pretty nice Q&A session at the end of the entire live stream. So we are excited to share lots of great news, updates, things that have been going on in the world of Substance. So with that, Jérémie, man, welcome. So glad to see you here. And yeah, man, how's it going?
Thank you, Wes. Happy to be here with the actual legend, Wes Pretty Ninja McDermott. So
Oh no, man, it's all you,
now
buddy.
we got some exciting stuff. We got some exciting stuff to show today. So yeah, let's get started. All right. So yeah, we got a bunch of stuff to show today, including some product updates, talking a bit about what's coming up, and a few events coming up as well for the community. So let's get started. And let's get started with product updates. So we'll go through each of our products again, just to remind people what our product lineup kind of look like today. We got, of course, Modeler is now was released late last year to model and sculpt 3D assets. We got Sampler to capture assets, and we'll see that there's a huge update for Sampler, came out a couple days ago. Designer to generate materials, 3D models as well, procedurally, Painter to texture assets, and Stager. Oh, there's a mistake here. It's not the right icon, but it's Stager to finally render your assets. And again, big update to Stager a couple of days ago. And finally, we have the 3D assets that kind of feed that ecosystem with tons of high quality materials and models and lighting setups. And then the layer of plugins and APIs and scripting component that kind of tie all this together to allow people to build amazing 3D pipelines. So we're going to start today with Modeler, and here you can see cool that really cool dragon that was created by our internal art and dev team here, Gio and Nikki and a few others, building this for Adobe Max last year with using Modeler, Painter, and Stager for rendering. So for Modeler, we had a release in December. So the first release was I think end of October last year, and in December we had a first kind of the first update. Brought a bunch of really cool feature like array copy, allow you to create full arrays of instances of models. It's very useful when creating large scenes, or typically to create the scales, for example, that dragon. Split booleans. We improved the export dialogues, and the export is something that we're still working on. We really want to make sure that the interop works very well between Modeler and the rest of our ecosystem, but also other apps. Since, as you may know, Modeler is works in with voxels, basically with sparse distance fill, so it's very different from traditional polygon workflow. And so the export process is very specific to make sure that that data can be translated to polygons and to various other 3D packages, including Painter, of course. We added UDIM support, so now you can actually create really large assets in Modeler, and will generate UVs automatically for you and spread them over multiple UDIMs. You can bring it to Painter and create very high quality kind of VFX assets, and of course many other improvements and fixes. So the team is hard at work on the next iteration of Modeler, and even though I can't show you too much today, we'll be able to show you a little bit later on what's coming. Improved decimation. We've looked at the community, all the requests we're getting, and being able to have a better decimation quality is one of the main things we hear, and so we're improving the decimation quite a bit, and we'll be able to show some results soon. But the decimation is really on par to the best you can find on the market today. improved lighting. And you can see here a screenshot on the right of our internal RTX ray traced lighting inside of modelers. So you basically here get a fully ray traced lighting while you're sculpting inside of modeler on desktop, which is pretty amazing. So still, of course, closed beta, but something that we're really eager to get in people's hands. CAD support, being able to bring into Modeler CAD models is also something we want to do, and being able to convert those CAD models into clay so they can then further refined inside the modeler. Typically useful for any kind of product design workflow. We want to iterate and kind of ideate on shapes and silhouettes. And GPU sculpting, right? Now the sculpting, a lot of the sculpting operation is on CPU. The team is working hard on kind of translating that to GPU for, of course, a huge gain in speed. We get some the community has been creating pretty cool stuff, and here are a few examples of things that were built with modeler and often texture in painter and rather than in stager. We got here Sinoli and Louise Melin at the top. Joshua, was the main lead designer on modeler, is creating amazing stuff every day with the app. Lawrence, part of our team as well, created vehicle at the bottom, and Ernest, you can see that kind of figurine, kind of warmer style figurine at the bottom. You can see a little QR code at the top. This is a link to our Discords. Discord is very active. We have amazing Val, our community manager for Modeler, doing amazing stuff with contests and challenges, and the community is very active and very fun to be part of. So please join the Discord. And actually, we have a small video that we can run from Ryan Cornell. So Ryan Cornell is part of our private beta for Modeler, and is building these amazing puppets in Modeler, and then bring them in C4D for creating the hair and fur, and then bring them to Unreal and kind of controlling those like you would control puppets. And he's built a ton of those. They're super fun to look at. So check out Ryan's work on Twitter. It's really fun stuff and really inventive and creative. It's really cool.
And Ryan was also just recently on our Modeler Monday, and so you can see the recording of that. He goes through his entire workflow and he breaks everything down from Modeler to Painter to Unreal Engine. It's really cool. Go to our channel and check that out, man. It was really cool to see his process.
Awesome. So next up we have Sampler, and as I said, we have a huge update on Sampler. Sampler until now has been really about capturing and translating actual real life assets into digital assets. So first materials with our AI powered image to material allow you to take any picture and we'll delight it and remove all the lighting and shadow information and generate for you a full PBR material. Then we added lighting capture, so you can bring in your 360 photos and you'll be able to edit. We'll be able to convert those into HDR light environment, be able to edit them using typically the content aware field to be able to remove defects or remove things that you may not want to see in that environment light, and kind of edit it very nicely. And of course, one thing that was missing is to capture actual 3D object, real life object, and convert them into 3D. So a couple days ago, we released Sampler 4.0, and there's a brand new photogrammetry workflow. So it has fast, best-in-class reconstruction. I'll be able to do a live demo today of the full photogrammetry pipeline. That's how fast it is. And you have a lot of interesting things like automatic subject masking, so you can mask all the environment around the object that you're capturing. Even if you're not in like a studio environment, you can still kind of get really high quality and really focus on just the object you're capturing. And it also integrated decimation and baking. So once you capture your objects, you can use the same decimation algorithm that we're working on for Modeler, and it's using the same UV generation using it in Modeler and in Painter, and the same baking that we use in Painter and Designer today. So you have that whole pipeline that allows you to go from those photos to a 3D model to various level of details with full, normal AO bakes, and it's really cool. And it works on Windows and Mac. So we actually, for the reason, we created a small video, kind of a trailer. So let's roll that out. Awesome. And what you see here on the right, that image is a close-up of that wood stool that we scanned, and that's part of the new Stamper new splash screen that you saw at the end of the video here. I think this was built by Casimir from our team as well. Amazing job on that splash screen. So
Yeah,
as
Jeremy, real
promised,
quick,
yeah, go ahead.
what was awesome about that? Sorry, really, what was funny is Kaz actually, I think I forgot what story was that, but he actually shot the capture just in the parking lot of the store for that. I think you can kind of see it in the video, but it was kind of funny how that came together.
You actually buy the stool, you just like took it in the parking and then bring it back
I
just
don't
for scan.
remember. You know what? I think he made the stool, but I can't remember. Sorry, Kaz, if you're watching, I couldn't remember. But yeah, I
Hey, it
just
looks
remember
like
he's
could
in
be
a
homemade,
parking
yeah.
lot, and he shot it. So it was really cool that just kind of it's fun to always hear the kind of the behind the scenes of how things come together.
Yeah. All right, so as promised, I have a sampler here, and we're gonna do a little photogrammetry example. So we saw in the video, Wes wandering in the woods around his home in Kentucky over there, and he took a bunch of photos of that wood stump in the forest. And let me bring up some of the photos. And so as you can see, it's not a lot of photos, but it's actually enough for Sampler to do a really good job at generating this. So let's and you
It
took
was
this
it was
using your
38
phone,
photos.
or yeah, you use your
Yeah,
phone or use a
yeah,
DSLR?
I did. I had an iPhone. It's just an iPhone 12, so kind of an older model to as well. And in my case, I used the Adobe Lightroom app, just because it had some nice kind of focusing options. But that doesn't matter. You can use just the camera app or any app you like, really. But yeah, it's pretty nice that I could just take my phone and just grab some shots. So it was 38 shots altogether.
Cool. So in Sampler now, when you create a new project, of course you have your materials, your light, and now you have that 3D objects option here. So I'm gonna add a new 3D object, and we'll have a pop-up here that allows me to just drop my photos. I'm gonna grab all these photos here and just drop them in Sampler. So no, it's kind of getting all these images. Um, and as I said before, one of the cool features we have in Sampler is that auto masking feature, and it's very useful if you have an object that's on a different background. You want to remove the background, you don't care about it. It will basically use the same technology that's in Photoshop and when you select subject in Photoshop or select object in Photoshop, it's the same technology we use here to select the subject. In this case, the stump is so kind of merged in terms of color and shape with the background and the leaves that it's probably not going to work very well. So it's fine. I can actually use another option we have, which is called the bounding box, to restrict um, the area that I'm going to reconstruct. But if you have an object that you set up on the floor at home or in a studio, it's really great because it will remove everything, the ground and everything. It just keeps only your object as part of the scan.
Hey,
So I have all
Jeremy, I
my
can say
photos
that it actually
here. You can
did
see.
work,
Oh yeah.
the masking. Yeah, I gave it a try just to see what would happen, and yeah, it did actually
Oh,
do. It
you
did
did?
mask. Yeah, I did try. It did mask the stump. Of course, in this case, it's not really what I wanted to do because I took the first kind of
Yeah, you wanted like
bottom
the around.
set.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanted to have the ground, so the
around
bounding
it.
box is perfect. But yeah, it did work. The masking was
Wow, I'm
pretty
actually
cool.
impressed. It actually worked.
Yeah, I was
Awesome.
too. Yeah.
All right, so we got our image dimension. If you have, a specific sensor size or focal length that correspond to your camera, you can set it up here. If you want to generate masks, you can generate them here. In this case, I'm just gonna go and submit, and just to leave the default parameters. You can just low or high here the precision. And in most cases, unless you have something that's very intricate, it's not gonna make much of a difference. So I'm gonna leave it on low here and hit process. And so here it's going to take a little while to generate our point cloud. So I'm just going to go back to our presentation and I lose my there we go. And kind of look at some of the stuff that people have been capturing with sampler. And here we have some really cool things that go from like very small objects to large scale stuff. So we got this pretty cool pottery here, that actual VW van. Materials Nicola has been building also. You can see these amazing kind of materials where he's just been scanning outdoors and then processing that in sampler to create compatible materials out of. Um, Anna from our team also kind of captured this like very small detail in the streets and added some 3D details on top, like the kind of gooey little thing on top is actually added in 3D and then rendered in Stager. Um, and Nicola also did that angel here. That looks pretty amazing. The streets also look really good. So we've seen a lot of interesting thing and as we said, the app was released just yesterday or 2 days ago, and we're seeing some pretty cool scans already popping up on Twitter. So we're really happy with it. Let's see where Sampler is at. I think Sampler is almost done. So next up, we're going to talk to you about uh, Designer quickly. And so Designer, we had a release also this week at 12.4, which was really about quality of life, like the small things that just makes your life easier when you're working with the tool. One of them is an option to clean graphs, so it will just clean every unused node that's in your graph. It's pretty useful. You can also type formulas now as parameters. So instead of just typing a value or being able to or have to kind of get your calculator out if you need to do a simple operation, you can actually now type the formula you're trying to do in the parameter field, and the result will be used as a parameter. You can also switch image input between color and grayscale. So until now, if you were creating input nodes in a graph, you had to choose between, creating a color node or a grayscale node. If you met up or if you need to change that input at some point, you had to quickly delete that node, create a new one with a different, a different color. Now you can actually dynamically switch those inputs in the graph. It's just a setting of the nodes. Also an option to select all the children of a node, which is very useful when you have a complex graph, and it happens often. You're building a graph and you're iterating on it, and it kind of looks like a little spaghetti monster. And you may have one node that is going to drive a whole the whole part of the graph, and you want to select that node and everything else that's after that to move it away, put a frame around it, tidy up your graph. So now you'll be able to select all the children on that node and move them all at once, which is very useful. And you can select all children or all parents as well. A random seed button. Until now, when you had a node that was driven by a random seed, you basically had a slider that went from 0 to 10 by default. You could type in, a custom value in there, but most users will just, switch it from 0 to 1 or 2, and so you end up with using always kind of the same random seeds, which is not ideal for previewing randomized effects. Now you have a random seed button that will actually generate a random value for you. And finally, a way to reset the slider range. So in Designer, when you're working with sliders, if if the slider goes from a 0 to 1, but you want to enter a value that's like 3 or 4, you can enter it, and then the slider range will automatically change to go from 0 to 8 because you type 4, so this is in the middle. So the initial range of that slider can vary vary quite a lot depending on the value you put in. And now you can actually reset that value. So if you want that slider, you forgot what the original range of that slider was, you can reset that. It will go back to 0 to 1 for you. So let's check on sampler again. There we go. I think we're good. So sampler, as you see, as we constructed our stump here, we can see the clouds, the point clouds, and what we want to do is just remove a lot of noise from like kind of distance areas of the floor, and really we only want the stump. We don't want all that noise around it. So
Hey,
and you
Jérémie,
can actually
the
see all
screen
the
looks a little
cameras here.
small. Oh,
Yeah, I think it's just because that's the pop-up from
oh, gotcha.
that's
Okay.
the pop-up from sample. I can actually scale it up a little bit. There we go. So yeah, we have point clouds, the camera positions, where Wes was taking the pictures. And what we want to do is just create a bounding box for it. And so we have that default bounding box here. I'm just gonna, bring back towards the center to kind of make sure that we only, generate geometry for what makes sense. So it'll just be faster in the first place because we don't have to deal with all that other reconstruction around the subject. And it will just be a much more manageable model in the end. So there we go. I think we're pretty good. And I'll just hit submit. And now the actual geometry reconstruction is gonna happen. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. There we go. And now we're gonna look at Painter. So Painter had a fairly big release last month in January, and 3 main new features: a new baking mode, which is the main thing that team has been working on for quite a while, USD support, and physical size improvements. So we're gonna go over all those various elements. So the new baking mode first, you can see kind of an overview of what it looks like now. Baking in Painter used to be a very kind of modal process. You would have your model, and you could go and bake, and it would just open that window. You can load your high poly mesh, set up your baking settings, and then hit bake. And then you would have to wait. There's a loading bar. You wait, and you see your bake. You see if something went wrong or not, and then something went wrong, you go back and you have to rebake. So it was not very visual. It was not, it was a lot of kind of blind iteration, which is not great. And so we wanted to make that baking process a lot more artist friendly. And so now that the whole baking as its own modes. And so you can see at the top right, we used to have the paint mode where you paint your assets, the render mode, the little camera here where you can do your iRay renders. And now we have that little croissant icon, which was something that I really insisted for a long time, that we would have a croissant for baking. That will actually bring up the baking mode where it's the app really changes entirely to focus on the baking part of it. So some of those features that we have here is, of course, you can see your low poly, but also your cage and your high poly. You can see where the high poly and the cage, low poly intersect, which is very useful. There's lots of visualization options to kind of debug your bake before you actually bake. We have that interactive viewport, so you can actually rotate around your model even while the bake is happening, to see what's happening with a neutral material. That makes it really easy to see, if things are going right or wrong. There's also, as I said, a lot of debug stuff, and typically seams and hard edges debug, which is pretty useful. Typically, when you have a hard edge on your model, you probably want to have seams on those hard edges to match with basically the split vertices that you'll get on those hard edges. And so we have an option to highlight those if they're missing, so that you can adjust use your UVs if needed. We also have a name matching checker. So in Painter, you can name match your high poly and low poly to make sure that only some parts of your low poly will only take some parts of the high poly, project only some parts of the high poly to bake, so that you don't have bleeding between intersecting objects and things like that. And that basically done with the naming of your assets. There was no way in Painter to really check check if the naming was right. So if you had an issue with big, you had to basically go back to my Blender, or where you were naming those meshes to try to find what was going wrong. So now we have that name matching checker that kind of shows you what's matching. If there are parts that are not matched with anything, makes it a lot easier to set up. And as I said, there's a lot more to it. You can see on the previous slide, there's a lot more options that you can play with to make sure that you have the best experience while baking. I'd like to say that this is kind of a first step. We have an internal effort to improve the baking game. We have there's some really cool stuff around baking that are in progress right now, including some pretty interesting R&D around trying to making that process baking faster and less manual and less time consuming. So we will, this is the first step. We will keep on improving that baking process over time.
And Jérémie, just real quick, I'd love to point out that Louise on our art and dev team created this really thorough, fantastic tutorial on step-by-step of all the new Baker features. So be sure to jump over to the Substance YouTube channel and check that out. It's awesome.
Next up is full USD support. So it's something that, people have been, especially studios in the VFX animation industry, have been wanting for a long time, and something that we've been, and I think we've been pretty vocal about it in various events, that Adobe and Substance really moving towards USD as a central part of our pipeline and applications. Most of our applications have some kind of USD support, and we're improving it over time. And in Painter, the Painter went pretty deep to really supporting USD in a pretty deep way. So you can now, of course, import a USD. If that USD has subdivision um, object, you can actually choose the subdivision level at imports. So you don't have to pre-subdivide, and you don't have like your locally mesh in Painter. You can actually have so that subdivision happening at import time. And if you have an animation, you can also choose the frame you're gonna work with. So if you have a character that may be in T-pose in animation, maybe in a different position, in another frame, you can choose which frame you're gonna work on for that specific project. And when you look at if you click that little change button here on scope and variants, you'll see the whole content of the USD file, and you'll see not only the various nodes and various objects in there, but also the variants. And so typically here we have, for that human female, you can see that we have different LODs, and we may have different variants. So you can choose actually which subpart of USD you're going to bring in. You can bring the whole USD or part of the scene, and you can also choose which variant of each object you're going to bring. Once you're done with texturing your USD, you have two options. You can create a brand new USD with the painting data and the model in it, or you can actually save the painting data as a separate USD layer that will just reference the original ones. So that if you have your original source of truth USD that's going through your pipeline, you don't actually need to modify this. You can have the painting data as an additional file that will reference that original, which is again really useful when you're kind of integrating Painter as part of a pipeline. And finally is physical size improvement. So we introduced physical size last year. And what physical size does is if your substance material has a physical size setup, which is the case for most materials on the Substance 3D asset platforms, and you can set it up easily in Designer. When you create your material, you have some fields with you have your name and the label and various things for your material, and you have a few sliders for the physical size, and that tells you basically what that material size is. If it's fabric, that's going to be 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter. If it's a brick wall, that's like 1 meter by 1 meter. And until now, this information wasn't necessarily used too much. But last year, we introduced into the fact that if you're using triplanar mapping, we actually match this based on the scale of the object. So that if you apply a fabric on a piece of garment, you're not going to have like the default tiling of like super huge fabric fibers. Will actually fit the right size based on your garment or your model. So that was only available for triplanar mapping, and so now you can actually use that option also with traditional UV mapping. So as long as you have a somewhat consistent pixel ratio on your UV, you're gonna get some pretty good results. Also part of that, we can adjust your model size. So if you bring in your model inside of Painter, when you export it from whatever app you were in, you may not have set the right units or something like that. So you can actually change that now in Painter to make sure that the model is the right size. And then the physical size, will just work. We also added options to actually have that as a default parameters. Until now, you basically had to set up for each filler you were creating. You could manually set it to physical size. You can actually set it in the preferences. You can make sure that every filler you create actually uses physical size by default. So if you know that all your materials they're going to use have that physical size information, it will save you a lot of time by not having to maybe manually tile and scale each layer every time you apply it on your objects. I think that's it for Painter. Let's go back to Sampler. I think Sampler is done. And so this is our final piece here. And this is kind of I think the raw model. You can see if I just remove the texture, this is kind of the geometry detail we get. And if you look at the wireframe, it's pretty dense. But at this step, you basically have that original mesh, and you can create new versions of it. So you can say, I want maybe a version that's going to be for a prop in a game. So instead of having that super high res mesh, I may want to have mesh is going to be maybe only 1,000 polygons, 1,000 triangles, and maybe the texture is only be 1K. I want to bake the normal map and the height and the ambient occlusion to make this work. And I have a lot of options to choose how the decimation happen. I have a lot of course, all the baking options you would typically find in the other Substance apps. And then you can just process a new version. It will generate a new version for you, less polygon, less different UVs, and then you can simply add them to your project. So here, for sake of time, I'm not going to create another version. I'm just going to add this to my project. I'm going to call that my stump here. Okay, and it will pop up over here, and there we have it. So our textured object. You'll see it actually creates a layer stack for you, so you can actually use all the filters and all the tools of Sampler on top of this to change change and enrich the texture aspect of it. Because of course the capture right now only captures albedo. So if you want to generate the interesting roughness or add various effects on it, add snow or moss or whatever Sampler is capable of, you can add this. And we're working on new filters that will really be dedicated to apply things on 3D models.
Yeah, Jeremy, what blew my mind about this that was really cool was, like, say you don't do the baking in the process stage and you bring in the layer, you can actually use the image to material AI powered to generate your material from that base map, and that base color map that comes in. And again, this is coming from Baptiste. It's super high resolution, like it's going to be 8, sometimes even 16K in resolution size. So like it'll generate this like super awesome material. You'll have your normal. You can go in and adjust your roughness and all that stuff. It saves so much time. It was really, really cool that you could do that.
So yeah, you can add as much detail as you want. And when you're done, you'll export it as you would export a material or anything else from Sampler. You can choose which format. Here I'm using USD, but you can export as GLTF or really anything, and the materials will come with it. So in this case, I exported this to Stager, and so we'll go over Stager and see what's new on that front. So let me go back to the next slide. There we go. And so Stager. So Stager also had an update this week, and the main feature really is turntables. So until now, Stager was really made to create. You can actually now create full turntables inside of Stager. And here you can see on the right, this is a turntable I've done of an asset that we actually, this is this asset here that I think was built by Geo in Modeler. And then brought into Painter for texturing. We apply all this cool materials. This really cool kind of velvety effect on the grips. Just really cool texturing here, and then we just send it to Stager and set up a turntable. This is a real-time turntable, by the way, so it's using our real-time renderer in Stager with the shadows generated by the ABL in real time. You can choose to render either through ray tracing or real-time. In this case, for this one, it actually looked pretty good with pretty good real-time renderer. Of course, generating the turntable in that case is much faster, so that's what I went with here. But I'll show you in a minute how you can set it up in Stager and use ray tracing for the same kind of thing. So other than turntable, we also have CAD import. We've actually had CAD import in Stager for a while, but until now, this was only available for the enterprise customers. So now CAD import is available for everybody. So you can just bring in your model from any CAD application, and it will be automatically minimized. UVs will be generated at import time in Stager. We also have USD export. So everything you build in Stager can now be exported as USD, so you can transfer it again to somewhere else. We also added negative scale and mirroring, which is very useful, when you're creating like packaging or images for shoes or anything that needs to be mirrored. And also, as I said, the real-time rendering output. Until now, you could really only render using the ray tracing engine. So now you can actually render using ray tracing or the real-time engine, making it much faster. So if I go in Stager, I have my controller here and my stump that I both imported, one from Painter, one from Sampler. I set up some lighting, and this is the real-time view. I can switch to my ray tracing view here to get a little better, material response. And I've also set up a camera. So this is just my viewport, and I also set up like a custom camera to get just the right angle, and I get the nice, depth of field and various things with the ray tracing. And then what I want to do is just, rather than doing a turntable this time, I just want the object to kind of spin on this, kind of like it's like a, like a precious item you found in the in the forest in an RPG or something. So what I can do is actually have a few rocks that I can put in the background. It'll look a little better like here. And what I can do is just select this, and we now have a new animation tab here. So you have the transform tab. Object tab, you have options about physics and things like that, and animation. And so in the animation tab, you can choose between orbit and spin. And typically, if you're going to do a turntable, you probably choose orbits, and that basically you select your camera, choose orbits. You can choose a target for that orbit, so you can orbit around one specific object, choose the duration, the angle, and that's pretty much it. That's all you have to do. So we kept it like very, very simple on purpose. There's no keyframe or any things like that. It's really, you want to do a turntable. Here's all the settings you need, choose the target, and you're good to go. And same thing so you get orbit and spin allows you to just spin an object on itself rather than orbit around that object. In this case, I'm going to spin this one, so I'm just going to add spin here. And by default, it'll give me a duration and 360. So if I play it, let me switch to real time so we don't have like the noisy. So I can, there you go. I got my rotation. By default, it's using exponential easing here, but you can choose between various effects depending on what you want to do. In this case, if I want this to loop, I would probably use a linear easing, and so now I have my, my controller kind of spinning on top of my stump here. And you can actually see that the camera is moving a little bit as well. It's because I have the spinning here, but I also set up an orbit with very, very low angle on my camera, just so the camera moves a tiny little bit while we're spinning the object here. Once I'm done with this, I can go in my render mode, choose my render setting. Do I want to do real time or ray tracing? Just a few options in terms of ray tracing, and how much time I want to spend rendering each frame. Do I want denoising or not? And then choose which camera I want to export, where I want to export it, the format, how many frames per second, and just hit render. And in this case, I have the final result here in my PowerPoints of that render here. It was done with the ray tracer, where I just have my spinning controller and kind of slightly moving camera here. So that stage here, again, super simple, super easy and simple way to create turntables of assets you may be creating in Painter or anywhere else, really. Next up, we have the assets. Always we have and as part of our products, we have our applications, but we really consider the assets platform as a full product. It's actually one of our main products. I think I mentioned this in a previous live stream, but in terms of number of users, the 3D Assets platform is second, just behind Painter. There's a lot of people, grab the materials and content and 3D assets on that platform. So we actually now, the platform is growing in, sorry, we're releasing new assets. The team building the content here is amazing, and they're releasing new assets, almost every 2 weeks. There's always new assets that are coming up. And so we're now at more than 18,000 assets. It's now the largest collection of curated 3D assets you can find anywhere. It's mostly materials, but also tons of models, and we're adding models all the time, and lighting environments as well. Some of the recent stuff that that was added to the platform in December, we had some really cool kind of stylized sci-fi material, kind of more game oriented. We also released in January some really interesting what the team calls advanced material technology, and those were designed in partnership with a CMF design studio. So CMF stands for Color, Material, and Finish, called Chris Leftery's design, where they were trying to invent kind of materials of the future that would react to things like tension and magnetism and various things. So kind of really interesting experimentations in the material space. Um, Also, coming in February, so coming this month, a bunch of new embroidered fabric materials. So again, here, very complex kind of patterns, and fabrics that look really great. And also coming in February, plants. So this is actually a set of models and materials that are kind of interior plants to create, realistic potted plants and things like that. Again, like the quality is just amazing, like every time. And finally, also coming in February, a bunch of eyes. Eyes are always really hard to create unless you start from, photo reference, which is really hard to find. The complexity of the iris of an eye is just really, really hard to create with the right, not only the right color, but also the right, normal map and all the intricacies that you can see here, especially in the middle eye here, all the kind of little fibers that come out, from the middle towards the outside of the eye. So all parametric eyes also, very useful for card artists will be on the platform soon. Something else that I wanted to highlight is the environment, what we call environment stages, which are really just a set of parametric 360 environment lights, as well as matching backplates. And the cool thing here is that we had worked with a professional photographer and director called Lionel Koretsky, to actually design, like the team actually designed actual studio spaces in real life, and capture those spaces with various lighting conditions. And so in one asset, you not only have the static kind of environment light, but you have various configuration of that environment light. And each light source can be turned on and off separately, or can have its color changed separately. So one environment can actually allow you to generate lighting for many different scenarios and situations. And another example here, you can turn on and off some parts of the environment. You can actually see, the light bouncing. It's not just like removing, some parts of the IBL, but just putting black instead. You can actually see the light bounces on the walls, really matching the vaping and the covers that were added on those windows. So again, just really useful, kind of unique type of asset that's on the platform. I think that's the end of my part. This was all the updates we had for you guys today. I'll give it back to Wes. We have a few events coming up that are really exciting that he can talk to you about.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Awesome walkthrough on everything that's been going on. Really great. So, like as you said, we do have several events that are coming up. Some big ones, especially one of our favorites, GDC. But right now we have GTC. So we're going to have 2 sessions that are going to be available in March. So be sure to check those out. And then also we are going to be at GDC in March. We're going to have a booth. We're going to have Substance Days, and we would just love to see you guys at the booth. So if you're there, come by and say hi. We'd love to check out, go through lots of cool demos and stuff. It's going to be a fun time getting together in person. And again, Substance Days will be back for GDC. So that's going to be really, really great. So moving on to the next thing that we want to start to talk about here is our Q&A. So Val and Vincent have been collecting a lot of questions from our Q&A from the actual chat in YouTube. So what we're going to do now is start to look through what some of those are, guys. So let me just bring up the doc here, Jeremy, and I hope you're ready to answer some questions.
I am.
So if we take, let's just start here with Modeler, right? So one of the questions right off the bat, what's the difference between Modeler and Blender?
Good question. I mean, Blender is a tool that encompass, every, part of the workflow. So Modeler is way more focused on one task, which is, generating, sculpting 3D models with one specific technology, which is the sparse distance field. What it allows us to do in comparison to, maybe Blender or other 3D application is that we're not working with polygons. We're really working with a volume that we add matter into that volume. And so there is no notion of, polygon, polycount, UVs, topology, all of that stuff. All of that is basically defined when we export, and at some point we want to export sorry, as polygons for using Blender or using other application. But the creation process in Modeler is very, very different from kind of a modeling application. And again, it's very focused on one task compared to Blender, which is kind of multi-purpose tool that allows you to do everything from A to Z.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. And will Modeler come to Mac OS?
We are working on it. It's harder than it looks or it sounds. But we have people working on the Mac port, and we'd love to have it on Mac at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so let's see, another question here. They were just saying, would be cool if we could create a rigging system inside Modeler. They know it would be a tall order to ask, but would be cool. So nice feature request there. Let's see here. And this is a great question here. I really I speak to this as well. Is Modeler useful for people that don't use VR? Like and they still use ZBrush. So can you talk just maybe a little bit about the difference between VR and desktop?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Modeler, the big selling point of Modeler is the VR mode, which really allows you to have that freedom of movement that you don't have with a mouse or with a tablet on the screen, where you can really feel like you're, you know, with your creation and around your creation. And but you know, Modeler is useful in itself without VR, and actually a lot of the modeler stuff that we typically show, some of those things are built entirely on desktop mode. And even though there's a lot of things we want to add to the desktop mode, a lot of tools that we feel like are missing or that we want to improve, it is totally usable in desktop. I would say desktop is more geared towards doing hard surface stuff at the moment. So typically, if you want to do, a vehicle or a weapon or something that is more, or furniture, something that's more hard surfacey, desktop is amazing to do that. If you're gonna do, dragon or creature, you're probably gonna have better luck in ZBrush unless you have the VR, a VR headset to pair with Modeler. Of course, these are things that we want to improve. We want to make sure that the desktop experience is, as good as fully featured and as versatile as the VR experience. And we'll get there over time.
Yeah, definitely. The team is an awesome team. They're incredibly talented, great people. They're working super hard on that, and yeah, so it's going to be, I don't know, future's pretty bright. I've gotten lucky enough to see some pretty cool things behind the scenes, so I won't say anything, but yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome what they do. So let's see. Another thing I just want to point out was kind of a question: Could Modeler have a subdiv mode? They're saying it's very core feature for product design. So I think some of the Modeler team is in the chat, so maybe they hear that as a request. So with that, Jeremy, I'd like to switch over to Sampler since we have the new photogrammetry feature. Lots of good technical questions here. Number one, this is a good one here. Why do we restrict photos to be 12 megapixels?
That's a good question. I'm assuming that that's a memory issue that to make sure that we're as stable as possible. I would defer that to probably Baptiste, who knows better. I don't know if he's in the chat, but I'm assuming that that's a safeguard against, larger photos that could plug up the memory.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's something like we could address, like maybe if we ask through, our Twitter channel or go to our Discord or any of our community forum sites, because we can definitely just speak right to Baptiste and get some answers, and he'll be able to tell us that. But yeah, unfortunately, we have to defer that to Baptiste. But definitely, please reach out and ask, and we'll get that information. And so here's another question: Does Sampler let's see, does sampler real raw or DNG images, or do they need to be, yeah, so basically, can we use raw images or do they need to be converted?
That's a good question. I haven't
I,
tried.
I believe you can. I don't mean to speak for you, Jeremy, but I believe that you can use raw images. Again, hopefully I'm not wrong there, but I believe that you can. So yeah, again, we can defer that to Baptiste, but I think you can do that. Okay, and is there a way to combine two photo sets, like poll with that table, have one where it's flat, side down, and the other legs up, and then combine the two to get the whole table? So is that, Jeremy, is that maybe, I think maybe the question is that what the photo groups are for?
I think that's it. Yeah, and we've had we've experimented with that. I think it's generally, for shoes, for example, you're gonna scan the top of the shoe and then you turn the shoe over to be able to scan the sole of the shoe and you'll do that again. So yeah, yeah.
Yep, great, great. And this is a great one. This was for iPhone users. Is it planned to support the HEIC file format?
That's a complicated answer. HEIC, the issue of HEIC is it come with, it's a proprietary format from Apple, and it comes with, there's licensing involved and things like that. So we can, talk much uh, around this now. It's something that I think we'd love to be able to support in the future. Right now, it's not the case. So if you want to use your iPhone to capture stuff for sampler, the easiest way to do that is just to go in your iPhone camera settings and switch the format to JPEG, so you don't have the HEIC format. You can just feed the JPEG directly straight to sampler. Um, the HEIC, format has additional data that could be useful also for photogrammetry, but it's not something we support today.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, when I was working on the stump for the tutorial, I think I even mentioned that when I was using the Lightroom app, I actually switched it to DNG, and so I was using that and then processing it through Lightroom to make any adjustments, and then I think I did export out as JPEG in that case. So another question here is: Does Sampler utilize 16-bit in reconstruction or just 8?
That's a good question too. I do not know the answer.
I
Uh,
believe it is 16-bit. Again, hopefully I'm not wrong there, but I think that it is. Okay, just checking. This one was actually a question like from a traditional sculptor looking at Sampler as a way to scan sculpts into 3D objects. It says here, what is the deal with the turntable increments? Is there a specific number of images needed?
Not really. I mean, you want you want a good coverage. Basically, the better, better the more photos, the better the coverage, and the less likely you have spots that were not covered by your cameras and your photos. There's no rule, as we said, like the example today was about 30 or 40 photos. I've done some experiments with 20. I've done some experiments with 60. It really depends on the complexity of the asset and the kind of is there intricate part that are not going to be very visible to the camera and needs like a specific angle. So there's no rule. That being said, be able to scan things in sampler and then bring them in modeler, for example, for cleanup or for modifying those the scans, the workflow that we'd love to improve. And both team are looking into how they can make that better. To have a full pipeline allows you to really be able to scan things, but not just keep the raw data. Actually refine and fix that data or modify that data in modeler and then export the final result.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jeremy. And I'll say too, like one of the things, like when I was working on helping with some tutorials, and then as well as just experimenting myself, one of the things that I really loved about the process was, so I would get my scan and then I would export, and I was using image to material to generate some of my maps, but then I was also using some of the process of sampler to bake the maps from the 3D capture window. But what was really cool, what I really loved, was getting that into Painter and then using Painter's capabilities to go in and like fix maps. Like for example, there was a couple of the base color maps where the way I had my focus just wasn't quite right, and so you'd see a little bit of blurring. Well, I just went into Painter. I was gonna say Photoshop. I went into Painter and I just used the clone tool and was like cloning out that blurred area, and it was like fixing my scan and stuff. And it was really quick way to do that. So I just fell in love with that workflow. So that was it's still manual process. I know we're gonna improve that, but even for now, like I was pretty thrilled that I was able to do that. Um, that brings me to another question here. Is there any feature for delighting scans for the photogrammetry, or is that planned?
So the lighting scans is, of course, is a little more complex because it depends on the complexity of UVs as well. So we don't have currently a proper way of delighting scan. If you have good UVs, the image to material delighting can work pretty well, even though it's not built for that. That can be one solution. But we don't have a proper solution for this yet. It's something that, of course, we'd love to have, but is not probably not going to have at least in the very short term.
Yeah, and again, I'll just mention as like kind of a workaround, not ideal, but as a workaround, again, just using image material. I did that as well because you can actually delight that base color, and
It
so
can
that
work on
that
on
yeah,
some
it helps
assets,
some
yeah.
too. So that was kind of a nice little thing that was possible. Let's see. Okay, just looking through. Let's see. Can sampler use 16-bit images to process and output 16-bit maps?
I'm pretty sure that we output 16-bit maps, yeah.
Yeah, 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 we can do that
I
on
haven't looked
both.
specifically, but I'm pretty sure we would, yeah, especially if we export, PNGs and AXR and things like that.
Here's another question. Are there any plans to add manual tracking points for object photos that have difficulty being processed for photogrammetry?
Good point. If you have any plans, but that could be interesting to be able to, manually the photos that fail to align to be able to manually align them. That could be definitely interesting. I could see a UX where you could do that with like maybe, hiding it on top of the mesh or something. Yeah.
Yep. Is it possible to scan a 3D
But at least
object?
if you're
Oh,
listening, add this to the list.
yeah, sorry, Jeremy. Yeah, is it like for thinking about organic
'Cause
objects? Is it possible to like scan a human head if they stay still long enough? Stuff like that.
if you manage to stay still long enough, yeah, I think we had people internally that I've
We
seen a
did.
head at some point on Slack
Yeah,
of somebody. So yeah, you just have to be very still.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think this question came up earlier. Is it possible to scan two halves of object and then merge them within sampler? And I think again that was what
I
the
believe
photo
so, the
groups were
groups.
for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
photo groups. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Just kind of checking things. Also, just looking on our time and everything. Let's see. Here's another. Here's a question here for designer. Do you plan on introducing any pure AI nodes to Substance Designer, like a seam removal or content awareness? I guess content awareness fill, something like that. It would help dealing with scan textures directly in Designer.
We're talking about it. We've been talking about it recently. The complexity of designer is that the node the the node graph is so tied to the runtime engine that adding things that are not part of that runtime, and typically AI things that may take a few seconds to generate, is not straightforward. But it's definitely something we're looking at. And in general, we're looking at a lot of ways to how can we improve our workflows using AI and ML technologies. We're gonna have a lot more to share about this at GDC in a couple of months.
Yeah, yeah, there's some cool stuff there. Is it possible to implement like a shader graph into Designer in the future to improve materials of Designer? I mean, it's kind of like what
Yeah, I
MDL
mean
is, right?
we've had. yeah, we've had the MDL graph for a while, which is kind of the NVIDIA shared model shared language that's used in IRA. We've also had a Material X plugin for a while that works in these analytics to create Material X. And definitely, materials are is one part of the material is the textures, but it's also a big part, and increasingly a big part of the material is how you layer those textures, how you potentially animate them, how they blend with each other. And we're definitely interested in looking more closely in these areas. And no more details to share now, but it's definitely something we're looking at.
Cool, cool. All right, man. Let's jump over to Painter. Quite a few questions here. Can't leave out Painter. Let's see. Any news on a pen tool rectangular selection for Painter? Yes, I. Is there, please, Jeremy?
Was that rectangular selection? Was that
Yeah,
the question?
rectangular selection, pen tool, stuff like that. I would like to throw in a lasso selection. Are we
Yeah,
going to
this,
do
I mean, these are
that?
things that these are things that come up often in meetings internally. So we have things in the work. Again, we'll be able to um, talk more about what's coming up at GDC. I think it'll be more fleshed out, and we may be able to show some things. Um, not necessarily exactly what you're asking for, but we have things in the work that will be interesting in the same idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is kind of like in that same kind of realm here. Bezier curve within Painter, 3D curves.
Yeah, I would say it's, stick around in a couple of months,
Yeah,
and we may have things to share.
yeah, maybe. Okay, USD import needs support for geometry subsets. Is that something that's on the roadmap?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? What
Yeah,
question was
sure.
that?
For USD
Uh,
import supporting geometry subsets as part of the USD format. Is that something that's on the roadmap? Something we're looking at?
Good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the roadmap looks for the USD supporting Painter for the future. I think what we're gonna do is now that that first implementation is out, we're gonna really gonna wait and see what USD is such a wide, large thing that has so many features that we have to be specific in what we implement first, uh, because implementing supporting everything that's in USD is a very large task, and so we're likely gonna look at feedback, see how studios are using it, and then implement those features as the requests come in, and as we can prioritize them. So I don't have a definite answer, but definitely, as I said, we're really committed to USD, and so that support will only get better over time.
Yeah, definitely. So for the again, back I'm still in Painter here for the new like the bake cage. Do we have plans for like local adjustments, like individual vertices to fix errors? Like I think right now with the new baker, you can adjust the max the rear and frontal. You can see that now. But I guess what this is asking, are do we plan on even more manual processing of that cage?
Yeah, right now you can adjust the cage globally. Of course, adjusting that cage locally is a request we get often. Something we'd like to get to at some point. Um, and we're also, working with our uh, um, research colleagues on way to potentially avoid that, rather than, of course, giving manual controls is always good. If we can make it so that the cage is so good in the first place that you don't have to actually do manual control, it's even better. And so we're working on both aspects of this.
Cool. That's interesting. Yeah. So this is a good question too. It was asking about when will Painter the Rust mass support anchor points. I guess in general, it's like it's more of a general question of when are we going to improve anchor points? Like it's a super powerful feature, but there's still a lot of manual process to set that up. I think everybody would love to see some improvements there. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally it's something that we know is a little bit complex, and we'd love to revamp or make easier. It's not something that we've you know been working on recently that is planned at this point, but it's something that's definitely on our mind. Like we know that at some point this needs to be kind of looked at and simplified. Yeah.
Yeah, and this question here again, back to the baker was is there a plan to a separate object baker in Substance Painter? And it's saying, for example, if you have multiple low and high poly objects, we actually already support that now. Is that right, Jeremy?
Uh, yeah, I mean you can have multiple parts in your low poly and multiple parts in your high poly, and with the name matching, you can make sure that the normal or the AO will bake only. It's basically creating multiple bakes basically that are then merged into one final bake texture. But that's pretty much how it works today. Again, we'd love to make it more, I would say, more modular and something that's easier to control. And again, that will come over time as we improve baking. But yeah, there's basic functioning right now that we'd like to improve.
Yeah, great, great. Will we ever get VR painting mode in Painter?
This is complicated. I mean, I know we've had that prototype like I don't know how long ago. That was a long
It
time
was
ago. We
it
had
was a
the
while back, yeah.
VR prototype maybe like 5 years ago or 4 or 5
Yeah.
years ago. And as a prototype, it was somewhat successful. Making it to something that I can actually scale and that would work well is really complicated just because Painter was not built from the ground up to support VR, and I think that's something that we learn as we built Modeler, and as we brought in some as you said, like the amazing team that built Modeler, that are developers that are specialized in developing for VR. What we learned is that if your application was not architectured and built in the first place with VR in mind, especially those applications that are very GPU heavy like Painter, it's really hard to plug it after the fact. And so, will we ever have a Painter in VR? Maybe. Will it be Painter as it is today, or will it be something else? We'll see. But I would love to. You know. Um, so we'll see what happens. But we have various ideas. No, definite plan yet, but we'd love to have it to make it happen.
Cool, man. Hey, I'd like to vote for a Substance Painter on a tablet. That would be cool. A couple of questions here. I'm kind of moving all over. I'm going to catch as much as I can here. This one was a Stager question. Can we import our own model and camera baked movement into Stager to render animation?
Not today. Currently, the animation, again, for sake of simplicity, animation is really just those kind of orbit and spin features in Stager. Um, we have not decided yet if we want to go further into um, animation, or if we want to focus on other things, more rendering side of things. So we'll see. But it's something we've thought about for sure. It's not possible today.
Does Stager have a viewer like Marmoset does?
It actually does. It's not something, again, we spent a lot of effort recently, but you can export to a web viewer. I don't think there's a way to embed it right now. You can share a link to that web viewer. I don't think you can, have it embedded on our station and things like that, like a Marmoset viewer, but it's similar in terms of functionality. The one thing that I guess is on top of it is that the viewer actually allows people to add comments on your scene as well.
Yeah. Is this one is I think a 3D assets question related to Stager. By the way, is there any plans on adding background images to the 3D assets that can be used in Stager?
Um, how can I answer that? We don't have necessary plans today. As part of Adobe, of course, we have the asset platform, and we have stock, Adobe stock, which is where you would find thousands and thousands of those background images. Um, of course, we'd love to have this work more closely together, but there's things that are in progress. I can't really talk more about this, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, man. So switching gears again, let me jump back up to Sampler. Will there be mesh repair options at any time in the roadmap, like being able to fill holes, or maybe there's a gap in the mesh or something like that?
Yeah, it did not make it in the first version, but that's definitely something we'd love to do. Yeah.
Okay, and
There's
this one
there's
here
there's
is
there's
oh
this and I think there's two aspects to it. There's being able to fill holes in Sampler, and also being able to fill hole gracefully in Modeler as well. If you brought something that you
Yeah.
scan into Modeler that's not watertight, being able to gracefully close these gaps is something we're working on.
Cool, man. Is there a way to reverse engineer an HDRI from the photos taken to use to light the object that was scanned?
Oh, to capture the environment as well as the object.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Uh, I think we've done some experiments like this a long time ago. Before even Sampler in Designer, um, to try to basically from the IBL cancel the lighting in the object that was captured in that same location.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's something that's doable. We should actually revise these experiments now that we have Sampler. I know that was a very long time ago that we did these experiments. It'd be interesting to look
Yeah.
at it again.
I remember seeing some of that from research and stuff. It feels like something will come out of that. This question here is sampler will let's see, will there be added a custom mask in the effect dropdown?
Is that a
Well,
custom mask in
yeah, I think one thing we could say is like I think certain effects like there's typically a mask option in the effect. So like if
I
you
see.
you add in a certain effect, there's it'll say mask, and you can either one drop in like a bitmap image, or there's the paintbrush, and then you can go and kind of paint it. But I'm wondering if this means could there be like a mask effect that gets maybe added to the layer stack, something like that.
I see. I mean, for if it's I don't know if it's related to photogrammetry, I think one thing that's missing in Sampler is obviously being able to use that paintbrush in on a 3D mesh. It's not, right now it's only in the 2D view. So that's something that we need to add to be able to potentially create custom masks on models to apply filters. Um, but I think in general we definitely want to build more, mesh-centric filters. Same way to have, smart metals in Painter. Now that we have that photogrammetry in Sampler, it would make sense to have, similar filters and masks that you can apply on actual geometry and not just on, 2D flat planes.
Yeah, because I think that was the issue I ran into just testing some things was that like you can add effects, but then the effects are like text they're in texture space, not world space or object
Yeah,
space. So
yeah,
then some things but then that's why jump into Painter and it's fine. But yeah, I think that was something they had planned to address. And then also one of the things is like if you work through the decimation in 3D capture and you re-project the textures, so it'll rework the UVs for you. Like it's kind of a guesswork right now, but if you get it in a certain way and it looks good in one of the versions, I mean, technically you can use the paintbrush in the 2D view, but it's not optimal. But I mean, there's
yeah.
little
It's not gonna be
workarounds
optimal.
there that did work. Let's see here. Let's looking at this was one question. It's like a feature request. Can you guys look in? This is for Modeler. Sorry. Can you guys look into exporting as step files so the topology is good? Look at Shaper 3D exporting as step and importing the mesh into another 3 package.
We're gonna look at this. I think right now for, when you export from model, you have two options. You basically either export in triangle using our custom decimation, or you can decimate as quads, and that's using, quad remesher, which is basically what, ZBrush and other applications are using out there. So if you want, clean topology, you can use quad remesher. It is sometimes a little destructive in terms of silhouette. It make, make it a little smoother than it originally is. But as I said, improving decimation is something that we're, actively looking at. Yeah, we'd love to be able to have, clean topology while retaining, sharp edges and things like that out of Modeler. It's a complicated problem, but we have amazing, researchers that are specialized in those issues that are looking at those problems.
Yeah, awesome. And here, I'm going to hit you with one more question here for Modeler. Is it already possible to use alpha maps for brushes, or are they already different brushes available, like for sculpting like stone and wood?
So you can bring in custom 3D models that you can then use as brushes. Not actual images, but you can bring in yeah, custom stamps that are basically 3D model that you would stamp on your mesh or use as an eraser or basically with any of the tools in Modeler. Um, we have internal experimentations on being able to, you know, paint geometry using, alphas and substance materials and things like that. Nothing that, is going to be released anytime soon, but of course we're looking at those things.
Okay, awesome, Jeremy. Okay, so one thing I want to mention here really quick is there was a survey that was posted by our team in the chat. So if you have a moment, please fill out that survey. We would love to hear your feedback and how to make our next stream better. So with that said, we're going to just go ahead and close out this stream. Before we go, I really want to give a special thanks and shout out to the entire 3D&I team, especially all of the devs. Several of our devs were actually here in the chat today. So great you guys were here. But again, just special shout out to all the teams back at the office, back at 3D&I for all the hard work you guys are doing in the tools. You're amazing. You're wizards. And it's so cool to to have Jeremy be able to be here to showcase all your hard work. And then also everyone who joined us today on the live stream, thank you so much for being here. We love you guys. You're the community. We love being here and just showcasing and talking Substance. We're really looking forward to our upcoming events, GTC. They're too similar to say, but we're going to be there live, especially at GDC with our booth. If you're going to be there, please come by. We have Substance Days. Would love to just chat, hang out, talk shop, things like that. It'll be great. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. Be safe. Have a great rest of your week, and we will definitely see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you, everyone.